This film kind of pioneered a lot of the techniques that became very influential and successful in Jurassic Park. But I feel like there's this trend where the female-led film, if there is like a female component, gets kind of forgotten. So I always think about that with House of Cards and Orange is the New Black, which put Netflix streaming on the map. And I just feel like most of the time, people will reference House of Cards and I'll always be like, don't forget about Orange is the New Black, because it really just like it annoys me.
But this is not the end of Meryl Streep's career.
She's still going.
Maybe to a degree, Goldie Hawn's career faded.
Wasn't she in a movie with Amy Schumer?
She was in like the Christmas Chronicles and Christmas Chronicles too. Did you see those?
I did not.
They're Netflix movies. Funny how you leave that out of the streaming conversation.
Okay.
Hello, welcome to Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Joe.
And I'm Allison.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movies, TV, and miscellaneous topics through a queer lens. And today we are talking about the movie
Death Becomes Her. Earlier today, my sister asked me, what are you recording tonight? And I was like, Death Becomes Her. And she was like, are you having an aneurysm? What's going on?
Because she was confused by the title.
Yeah.
Did you know about this movie before I told you about it?
No, I really didn't know it existed until this summer.
Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis star in this movie. And I feel like I had like discovered it and like the movie cover is kind of haunting in a way. I was like, what the hell is this movie? It looks very strange. And I watched it and it was so campy and over the top and I really enjoyed it. And I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times in my life though.
Do you feel it held up to your expectations?
Pretty much all the beats of the movie I remember. I will say what was most different in my experience watching it this time is it's so funny. It's such a goofball, screwball comedy. A lot of fun. I think all the performances are great.
Right.
But there's this like heightened comedic element to it and like screwball comedy of it that near the end I was getting kind of exhausted.
I hear you. I hear you.
I was ready for it to be over.
It goes places. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah.
I guess we got to clue in the audience for those of
Well,
our.
but before, what did you think of it?
I didn't know where it was going really at all in the beginning, because the setup is just 2 old friends, Meryl and Goldie. Goldie's with Bruce Willis and she's complaining like, you just can't fall in love with Meryl because all my boyfriends leave for Meryl. And they go see her in a Broadway play and she's singing this like fabulous song and Bruce is totally beside himself. And then
well, actually, it's not such a fabulous song. People are walking out the theater.
Oh, but
and Bruce
enamored.
is the only one that's enamored with Meryl Streep, which is even more insulting to Goldie Hawn because like this performance is shit and you're still in love with her.
Still. And then he's like, she's again being like, you can't do this to me. You can't be one of the ones that does do this to me. I think they might have even been like considering getting married. And then all of a sudden he goes, I'm not interested in her at all. And then it immediately cuts to him and Meryl getting married. And then there's kind of a problematic, probably the scene that aged the least well, where Goldie Hawn's like in a fat suit and lives alone with cats and is watching Meryl Streep's character die in a movie over and over again because she's an actress. Though there's some queer kind of element to that,
This is a very queer movie. This is a very queer movie.
And so I kind of just didn't really know where it was going from there. So I was sort of like, okay. And then it went in a direction I did not expect in spite of the title of the movie, which should have given it all away.
Yeah. It is introduced by Isabella Rossellini that there is a vial that basically when you drink it, it allows you to live forever at the age that you currently are with some improvements even.
She's kind of very mysterious about it. She never comes out and says, you'll live forever.
She just says take care of your body because you'll be with it for a long time.
Yes. And she describes like, don't you want, like, look at your hand. Don't you want it to look, supple and youthful? And like, she kind of uses more like, I don't know. It's not like she said, take this potion. You're signing your name in the book of the devil. You're going to live forever. You know what I mean? Like it didn't really.
Of course not. That'd be a really strange thing for her to write. People probably wouldn't sign up if that's what she said.
Well, you'd be surprised.
So you drink this vial and it basically like de-ages you to a degree and kind of like leaves you at if you do age, you age slowly more and more over time. But the way I kind of took it is you become almost like a Barbie doll in a way.
Yes.
Where you become very fragile to the elements and your body no longer responds well to, you almost become like plastic.
Yes. And I suppose I have a question because what happens very quickly is that Meryl does take the potion and she goes home transformed. And meanwhile, Goldie Hawn's character is conspiring with Bruce Willis's character, who Bruce has kind of been beaten down by Meryl over the years. And Goldie has, meanwhile, had a glow up, a very interesting, and in retrospect, suspicious glow up because she looks amazing for her 50-some years of age.
Goldie.
Yeah.
But did you not connect it?
Not right away. Not until, which I think you're not supposed to. I think like when
they did a really good job of it.
Yeah, I like figured out maybe like 10 minutes before
it
happened.
When she...
So Meryl comes home and Goldie and Bruce have been conspiring to kill Meryl, but in a very like thoughtful Goldie approved plan that involves poison. But what ends up happening is Meryl's very emboldened by her new aesthetic and she's going to go out and Bruce kind of confronts her and she's mean to him and is like, don't wait up for me. I can't really remember the content of their argument, but she basically says like, you're not a man. You know, some other kind of choice words implying that same sentiment. And it's very comical. He gets really angry and you like kind of know he's going to push her down the stairs. But there's like a very long period of time where she's teetering on the edge of the top stair. And she's like, help me. And he can very easily like grab her. And they like linger on him. He's like, and he just like reaches out a finger. And taps her, and then she falls down
she's painfully like crying out, like, help me. She's like very frightened.
Yeah.
And then Bruce feels really bad. And then he's taking so long to grab her while she's like flailing. And then finally she's like, help me. And then he like immediately just sees how like awful she is. And so instead of grabbing her, his little finger comes up and pokes her and pushes her down the stairs.
And so then she dies. And he's,
yeah, but let's soak in this a little bit. She like bounces down the staircase. You see like her limbs and body in just like the most aggressive and dramatic way just fall down these flight of stairs, which I'm really curious how they pulled that off.
I don't know.
But you're watching Meryl like hit every step down the way in a very deathly way. And yes, lands on the floor. And
then, you know, meanwhile, in a way, you definitely anticipate this as an audience, which is very fun to have that anticipation. He's on the phone with Goldie. He's like, I don't know what to do. And I didn't follow the plan. And she's like, are you an idiot? What do you think the police are going to think when they realize you called me first? And she's like talking him through what to do. Meanwhile, we can see what he can't, which is that Meryl is alive. Her head's on backwards, but she's alive and kind of like getting up, trying to find her way over to Bruce. And then they have a confrontation and they turn her head right side around. But my question is, and then they end up going to the hospital and the doctor passes away because he's interacting with this woman. He's trying to find her heart. He's like, this lady is dead, but she's talking to me and it scares him so much he dies. And Meryl gets taken to the morgue because she faints for some reason. And then Bruce rescues her and she's like, why am I in here? And they're like, you're dead. And so anyway, it's very much established that she's dead in a hilarious manner. But my question is, the potion. Has she been dead since she drank the potion? Or do you have to actually die within the world of the, like if they had taken her to the doctor and taken her pulse, if she hadn't fallen down the stairs, would she have a pulse?
No.
So she's been dead from the beginning.
I mean, I don't know if you call it dead.
I mean, I think that they're supposed to be undead.
They are undead.
So that's dead. They're dead.
You're undead. That's not dead.
You don't have a soul.
Dead, you're like not able to walk around and talk and think. And I still think they have a soul. They might be shitty people, but they still have a soul.
I don't think that's the intent of them. I feel like the movie is kind of moralizing in a weird way.
Well, yeah.
So I feel like you're supposed to like, you know, kind of like in those old early American stories about the man who does sell his soul to the devil so that he can get all the money he needs or be immortal, and then he realizes he's condemned himself for all eternity.
I always tied in soul with consciousness, though. So if you're like consciously able to make these decisions, I feel like you have a soul.
That's a good question. I just feel like it's not like I'm on their side. I mean, the movie you're not supposed to like them, but we do, and that's why it's like a cult classic. But the movie wants us to see Bruce Willis as the good guy who has a soul and humanity.
They're awful people, but I'd still say they have souls.
Okay, I don't know. I don't really know.
What do you mean?
I guess I kind of interpret it as like a sneaky morality tale.
It is a morality tale. A soul,
but they're kind of demonic, you know? Like
they are demonic.
So demons don't have souls?
Who says that?
You think Beetlejuice has a soul?
To be conscious and to make decisions. Like at any point they could decide to start making better choices, but they don't.
I guess I tie soul to humanity and vulnerability.
I mean, they're losing their humanity, but have they lost all their humanity in this movie?
By the end?
Well, by the end. Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll go with that. They're on the path toward a soulless existence. And I love how we're taking this really seriously. Like, how does one even define a soul?
No.
Like, what even is a soul? I don't know.
This is a much goofier movie than what
we just made it really
got
serious.
into. But I mean, it is asking really interesting questions, and it's satirizing being a woman, being specifically a woman in LA, being a Hollywood actor,
being an aging woman.
It's like really doing interesting things,
but in a very silly, campy,
but in a very
fun
silly way. But I'd say there's really like 2 scenes in this movie that I really care about, and the rest I could give or take.
Oh, okay. Do tell.
It's really memorable, just the 2 really big visual effects scenes, which are when Meryl Streep falls down the staircase and the scene when Meryl Streep shoots Goldie Hawn through the stomach. I'd say like the 2 big visual effects scenes, and they're the most memorable parts, and I love the rest, but I can really take or leave it. Like, I just feel like this movie, it's a really fun, silly movie, but I recognize why it may not have been so successful at the time.
Well,
it's very exhausting.
I am curious to know why it wasn't.
I think it was described as a moderate box office success.
Okay, so it wasn't a complete flop.
It wasn't a flop.
Okay.
No.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And I'd be curious to know what it went up against as well. You know what I'm saying?
Time?
Yeah, I'm gonna look.
I don't know.
Let's look that up.
I do know they talked about it on the Blank Check podcast, and Robert Zemeckis directed this movie. And Robert Zemeckis, a blank check, of course, means like if you're really successful beforehand, you get to do something that you do by choice. So it's really interesting. Robert Zemeckis is coming off the success of the Back to the Future trilogy, and then it's really interesting that he decides to do this very like queer high comedy concept movie starring these like really big A-list actors. So yeah, it was a moderate success in the box office.
So it was the number 1 at the box office that weekend, the same weekend as Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Did this come out in 1992?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There was a Buffy movie.
Before the TV show.
Oh, and BB's Kids. I've never heard of that movie.
BB's Kids?
Yeah. Okay, but I will say something that you said, that the special effects, like in the movie, so like for example, Meryl's head,
Meryl Streep,
like completely turns around, it like flops around, she like puts it back into place, and
they hold up for today, 2024.
Yeah. And then Goldie Hawn, you were describing the like hole in the center of her body, and even the shooting scene, she gets shot and like flies through the like glass windows into a pond, and you think that she's dead. And I had figured it out maybe like 15 minutes before that she'd also drank the potion. So I was like, again, one fun thing this movie does is you're kind of like, you know what's going to happen. The characters don't, so you're kind of like waiting. And then she, gets up out of the water, like shakes it off. She's got the giant hole in the center of her. And Meryl's like, you took the potion too. And they start fighting with shovels. But this film kind of pioneered a lot of the techniques that became very influential and successful in Jurassic Park. And I believe it may have won an Academy Award.
It did.
But I feel like there's this trend where there'll be a big movie that's kind of more
a stepping stone for the next thing.
Yeah, that and like the female kind of led film, if there is like a female component, gets kind of forgotten, like in the historical story. So I always think about that with like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black, which put Netflix streaming on the map. And I just feel like so often I'll be in conversation with people talking about, when did streaming pop off and how the TV landscape's really changed. And most of the time, people will reference House of Cards and they'll never reference Orange is the New Black. And I'll always be like, don't forget about Orange is the New Black. Because it really just like it annoys me that the kind of female-led content can kind of be erased a little bit,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't really think it's necessarily, Jurassic Park was such a triumph. I don't really think it's quite, the same thing. But I do find it interesting that I had no idea this movie existed. And yet it was so influential in something I love.
That's an interesting point to make, that maybe partially this reason is that it's like a female-led comedy, or there's like very the idea of like women and aging.
Mm-hmm.
But something that's interesting though is like this is not the end of Meryl Streep's career. Like this was like she continued far along after this.
She's still going.
Maybe to a degree, Goldie Hawn's career faded more so after this.
Yeah, wasn't she in a movie with Amy Schumer not that long ago?
Did you see that movie?
No.
She was in like the Christmas Chronicles and Christmas Chronicles too. Did you see those?
I did not.
Interesting.
Are they good?
They're Netflix movies. Funny how you leave that out of the streaming conversation.
Okay. House of Cards and Orange is the New Black are the reason streaming became what it was.
Those are the shows?
Those were the first Netflix shows, period. And then there might have been a third one, and I'm probably writing that one out of the history.
How often are you having this conversation with people?
Because I love TV. It happens actually often. It just happened to be the other day.
And you were like, what's the first streaming show that ever existed?
No, it's more like someone will be explaining to me something about streaming or the entertainment landscape, and they will say, well, I'll start with House of Cards. And then I will go, and Orange is the New Black.
Who?
Tell you later. Should I just read the background info that I have here?
Absolutely.
Death Becomes Her is a 1992 American satirical, surrealistic, dark comedy fantasy film.
Oh my gosh.
Woo!
That's a tongue twister, but I agree with all those words.
I agree, and I want to see more satirical, surrealistic, dark comedy films.
Yes.
Like, this movie is about a serious theme, but it is never serious.
The emotion, it takes everything lightly, even though, because if it were to really...
It'd be dark.
It would be
dark.
Yeah. Which I guess that's what dark humor is you have to have the light to balance the dark themes.
I'm also like thinking about how there is such little emotional depth, and the fact that all three of those actors are so strong. I never questioned it because they're just so good at their jobs.
Yeah.
Directed and produced by, as Joe said, Robert Zemeckis, and written by David Kopp and Martin Donovan. The film stars Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis, and Isabella Rossellini. Its plot follows two women who fight for the affections of the same man and drink a magic potion that promises eternal youth. Filming began in 1991 and concluded in 1992. It was shot entirely in Los Angeles. It was released by Universal Pictures and received mixed reviews from critics, and it did win the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. Nowadays, the movie is regarded as a cult classic and a highly treasured film within the queer community.
Especially, I think it's mentioned a lot on RuPaul's Drag Race. And it's like a lot of queens on there just say how important that movie is. In fact, I think there was an entire episode revolving around
the characters,
which I see a lot of the similarities, because like this idea of, they pretty much lose the ability to in a way they lose their humanity, where they so much so that to like upkeep them, they almost have to be treated like cars in a way, where it's like Bruce Willis, who he starts out as a doctor, but eventually kind of becomes more of a mortician. He's basically like spray painting them. I forget how that transition happens.
It's implied that being married to Meryl Streep, was she Madeline or Helen? I guess
Madeline.
Okay, well, let's just call them Meryl and Goldie, I think, because
but their names are Mad and Hell. It's so great.
Okay, well, Mad and Hell. Well, whichever one it is.
I think Meryl's Mad.
Okay, Mad. She's such a difficult woman to live with. It's implied that somehow this has caused Bruce Willis to lose his career as a plastic surgeon, and he must become a mortician. I don't really understand why.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Yeah, it's like he becomes a severe alcoholic.
Addicted, so he can't operate on people anymore. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know why I wasn't computing for me.
The best he can do is
work on,
which is a pretty hard job in and of itself.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, he has to basically to upkeep these women, instead of just using like regular makeup, he's using like spray paint to fix them up.
Yes.
Drag is like they're coming up with creative ways to, shape and become how they're on the show. So there's definitely a bit of drag in Death Becomes Her, I feel like. And just like the high like energy and the sass and the camp of it all.
There was this article in Vanity Fair, the Death Becomes Her 25th anniversary Meryl Streep Goldie Hawn gay classic. And I pulled some quotes that kind of describe why the drag community or the queer community, at least according to this article, have kind of pulled on to this film or attached themselves to this film. And one of the writers says, you can't really underestimate the entertainment value of two women swinging shovels at each other. I could invent some excuse, but deep down in my heart, I know. And he mused that maybe the queer community was attracted to tales of struggle but resilience, about people who are never giving up, even if it's a mess. That's one part. But then the executive producer of Drag Race, Tom Campbell, thinks it's because even though they're villains, there's something sympathetic about them. The movie was ahead of its time in a lot of ways because they have these conversations about looks and what we're willing to do to our bodies for beauty. I think it's only multiplied exponentially since that movie was made. Mm-hmm. And lastly, there's this trait that runs throughout the queer community, the obsession with the hyper-feminine female villains. And we see it in Disney movies and movies like Death Becomes Her. and in characters like Poison Ivy and Catwoman. Almost all the Disney villain witches are gay icons, like Sleeping Beauty's Maleficent.
Yes.
Sleeping Beauty's Maleficent. The Little Mermaid's Ursula, who was reportedly inspired by the defiant drag queen Divine.
The defiant drag queen Divine.
That's what the article says. But yeah, Ursula, that's what there's a lot of controversy in the live action film where they cast Melissa McCarthy, but in reality that Ursula was supposedly inspired by a drag queen, and maybe that character should have been in their live action version. Yeah, like being a strong female character that we love because they're evil, you know? I think there's something there to it, and being an outcast, you know, and striving for power, fighting for beauty. I'm just like looking at the article and reading lines. The producer of Drag Race also said they're against the system. They're also villain. They're fighting for beauty. They're against the system. They're also villains, but we understand their complexity. Yeah, they'll do like whatever, you know, it takes to reclaim their beauty. And I think it seems supposed to seem shallow to want to be beautiful, but really I think that Goldie and Meryl know that to be beautiful in our society as a woman is perhaps one of the few pathways to power.
Well, and Meryl Streep is an actor in the movie.
Yeah.
This movie starts out with an incredible musical number where Meryl Streep is singing a song. Is it called like Me, or what's it called?
I don't know what the name of the song is, but it comes from a fictional musical version of the tragic Tennessee Williams drama Sweet Bird of Youth. And
Meryl's doing this musical number. I mean, she's an actor, she's a performer, she's doing Broadway, she's doing television, and you know, the camera's on you. It's important how you look. And so like youth or looking youthful and looking beautiful is like really important, especially for a career
on the stage or in
front of the cameras. And what does Goldie Hawn do?
She's a writer. It's a little bit not as explored, but she wants to be a writer. I think we talked about this before with Connie and Carla, like the idea that femininity, it's a quality, but it's also like a performance. Like we're kind of socialized to be feminine, and then like to claim that femininity, and because it's also kind of demonized in like an exaggerated form, like you might do with drag, is a way of like celebrating it. You know what I'm saying? I can see why, even though in the movie these are not supposed to be like good characters, like we're supposed to think their choices are bad, the idea that they're leaning so heavily into wanting beauty and to being as feminine as possible and tying that to their cultural cachet and what they want out of life, it's like saying, yes, like we should lean into these qualities, which is kind of what drag, what you can do with drag. You can kind of claim that femininity and celebrate it.
They're anti-heroes.
Yeah.
They're the protagonist of the movie, though. Like, sure, like Bruce Willis.
Course.
Bruce Willis is a good guy, but like we're rooting for Mad in Hell.
And I especially was rooting for them midway through the movie when they finally decide they're really like angry at each other. Like, and of course, Meryl has every right to be kind of angry because they were plotting to kill her. But then at some point, I forget what makes them turn, but they're like, you know what? We should just forgive each other, you know? Oh, because they're finally honest. They're like, I forget. They're like fighting with one another.
Like fighting with like the stokers and a shovel.
Because they were going to bury Meryl's body with that stuff. And then one of them's like, you got to admit it. You have to admit that you thought I was a hick, you thought I was a nobody, and that's Meryl to Goldie. And then Goldie to Meryl's like, you have to admit that you stole all these guys and you liked it and you knew what you were doing, and they both admit the truth. And then for some reason that allows them to, well, not for some reason, because they finally stop pretending to be fake friends. They were able to become real friends and team up. And then they kind of are like, wait, we can't let Bruce step out of this story. We need his ability as a mortician to keep us looking young and beautiful for forever. And so then what's wonderful is that their goal shifts, and they, have to, instead of trying to hurt one another, have to focus on making Bruce stick by their side as he wants to kind of escape their scary dead clutches.
Yeah. Well, more so they want him to drink the potion also so they can live longer.
That's like the next beat of that where they're like, wait.
But speaking of being fake to each other, this whole movie, like the first like 10 minutes of this movie, we pass through like 14 years. Like first it starts out like in 1977, then 7 years pass. And that's when like Meryl and Bruce get married. Then another 7 years pass. And that's when like the book comes out and that's when Meryl drinks the potion. So like a lot of time passes through. But in the beginning of the movie, when we first see Meryl's performance, Meryl's in her room and the assistant comes in and lets Meryl know that Helen and Bruce Willis's character are like outside to say hello. And just like to speak to the amazing performance of Meryl Streep, she does this incredible thing where she like pretends to be surprised, like she's pretending how she's going to react when Helen walks in, and then Helen walks in, she does like the surprise look that she's going to do, and I think it's really hilarious. And what I was also listening to on the Blake Check podcast about is this was coming off Meryl Streep's hot streak of being in all these comedy films. They were positing on the podcast that she had just done She-Devil and she had just done Postcards from the Edge, and then she did this movie Death Becomes Her. And in like the 70s and 80s, Meryl was doing like very, dramatic performances. She was in the Deer Hunter. She was in, what's the?
Sophie's Choice. Sophie's
Choice, but also the one with Cher where Cher's a lesbian. She was a more serious actor. And then so this was like seeing her in these like more comedic roles, and she's hilarious in this movie. And they were also saying on the podcast that like, but without being, she wasn't like a tryhard. She wasn't like desperate for the laughs. It just came very natural. And so now it's like funny, like looking through our eyes back at Meryl Streep, whereas like people at the time, they were saying, might have seen like been surprised that, hey, Meryl Streep's actually kind of funny. But it's so funny now that we know her over time. Like she's been in The Devil Wears Prada, like she can do comedy, or then she's in like Mamma Mia where she's so like lighthearted and carefree.
Totally.
And they were also, this is the last time I mentioned about the Blink Check podcast for a while, but they were comparing her performance in the Death Becomes Her and Mamma Mia, like the difference between the two. And it's like Death Becomes Her, like while she's being like fast and fun in this role, like she's like every like part of her movement is like so precise in how she does everything. And it kind of speaks to also how the VFX was like really painful to do and accomplish because you have to be so like restricted, but she's just like, is so sharp in her performance. Whereas like Mamma Mia, they're saying, it's like funny. It's like, she's like, hey guys, like, I'm just here to have fun. We're going to have fun. We're going to be light. We're going to be loose. We're going to sing.
I'm going to dance over here. I'm going to dance over here. And then I'm going to do a little twirl. Well, it's funny. You just unlocked something for me. I didn't write this down, but while I was reading about this movie, I'm pretty sure after it was over, Meryl was like, I'm never doing something with that much visual effects again. Yeah. I hate it.
Yeah. What seems so effortless, like think about like Goldie Hawn being shot through the stomach.
Yeah.
Like how would you pull that off?
Me? How
would you imagine someone pull that off? That'd be so hard to do.
I mean, I guess nowadays I would just imagine they'd put her in green.
I mean, they probably had green screen back then, like where her stomach is, but how do you like, and at one point they have like the Stoker, or they like throw the Stoker like through her stomach. It's like, how was she sitting on the couch? They were able to do that. Like
actually Meryl said something like, I don't like acting next to a tennis ball.
Right.
Like, so and it kind of makes sense. She's such an actor's actor.
Yeah. So I'm sure there were times where Goldie Hawn is like composited into the shot. So there were times where like Meryl Streep was just having to act off
a tennis ball. Yeah. Which, okay, that makes me think of Orphan Black and how impressive it is that Tatiana Maslany inhabited not only like 9 characters, but all the time was playing off against a little tennis ball because they had to put herself back into the screen, and her amazing double as well. But anyway, I guess there's different kinds of acting. There's the technical kind, and then there's kind of the more like theatery, I need the chemistry in the room to bring the best performance. And maybe Meryl is more of a I mean, I think she can do it all, but perhaps she prefers the immediacy of acting off of a human being.
Which she's getting to do right now.
What do you mean?
In Only Murders in the Building season 4.
Oh, I know. By the way, the writers of this movie had no idea it would become a cult gay classic. They were like, oh, we didn't know that was going to happen. They were kind of like, oh, I wonder why. And then that one guy speculated it was maybe because of stories of resilience. Meanwhile,
they were surprised.
Yeah, that's what they said. Or that's what they claimed.
That's what they claim.
That's what they claim.
They cannot be surprised. This movie is all about like makeup getting done up and all that stuff.
And leaning into like powerful female energy. Feminine energy, I should say. But Meryl was quoted in 2016, and Meryl knew. She was like, it was for the release of Florence Foster Jenkins. She was being interviewed, and she said,
that's the opera singer movie.
Yeah. And she said that she knew Death Becomes Her would become a gay classic as soon as she sang the opening number.
What is it called?
Tennessee Williams' drama Sweet Bird of Youth.
Me. It is called Me.
It's called Me?
No exclamation point. Don't even start.
Yeah, and so I kind of was like contrasting this in my mind with Connie and Carla, because like in Connie and Carla, there's like no rivalry, there's no bite, to it. It's kind of more like Barb and Star go to Vista Lamar. And then this movie is like, is there something that you want to share?
Death Becomes Her just became a musical. May 2024.
Is in my blueprint. Damn it, it's at the end. Yeah, I was going to tell you, but did you know? I was going to say, did you know that it was a musical? Or I was going to say, did you know what was going on in Chicago just before we got there? And then you were supposed to say, no.
I told you about it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember
but
that.
before you knew what Death Becomes Her was.
That's probably why I didn't stick on my. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, like interesting analysis of why this could be considered a queer movie. I think there are two reasons why. One is kind of something we picked up on during the movie where Goldie Hawn's character is jealous of Meryl's character, but in a way where she wants what Meryl has, which is often a queer female kind of trope. And then later on, they kind of team up together and I mean, they basically spend eternity together. And I think there's even a line like spray paint on your butt when the time comes. And it's like, oh, gay, I suppose. But then the other kind of interesting reading I found, and I think this was from like a Paste magazine article. When you're queer, the timeline of life or like the expectations of like you grow up, you get married, you have a kid. It's suddenly like, oh, maybe not. And maybe it's going to be delayed. Maybe you're going to have like an adolescence that kind of extends. Maybe not. But anyway, this idea of like, we're supposed to move through life in this very typical fashion. Queer lives don't follow that. And maybe we get to like subvert social expectations, revel in youth a little bit longer. And so there's this like idea where striving for immortality is seen as bad by the movie. And yet like choosing to live outside of society's norms and expectations is queer. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And they were pointing out how like the potion was purple or lavender, which is like a queer color. And the doctor that recommends this place to Meryl is like coded as a queer man or gay man. And then Isabella Rossellini, I wouldn't say is queer coded, but the men who are her like minions in that mansion certainly are, the way that they're dressed. And
they're kind of like 80s muscle men.
Yes. And so I do feel like
also,
there's this
Isabella
other...
Rossellini, at the beginning of the movie, she's like not even wearing a shirt. She's just dressed in jewels. She's shirtless. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like, oh my gosh. She was like naked, but at the same time fully clothed in a way.
It was striking.
Very bold and striking.
And so, yeah, I guess like there is this kind of like, oh, immortality or living outside of what we think is normal or moral is bad. But then there's also like a queer, like maybe there's like a reading here where we're like, oh, we want to reclaim being bad, being outside of the norms, reveling in our youth and saying no to the social expectations of what we're supposed to do as adults. Or I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool.
But then they do feel the pressures of maintaining beauty.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fully work. But this article in Paste Magazine pointed out that this is definitely a morality tale because we even end with a homily where Bruce Willis's character has managed to escape. He's lived his whole life and it's like
escape life itself.
Yeah, eventually. But like in between, he's like married. He's had all these children. He's done all these accomplishments. He's gone back to doing good for the world. And so the idea, I think like the preacher's giving this like he'll definitely be remembered. Like he lived a life worth living. And meanwhile, Meryl and Goldie are in the back and they have to wear this crazy veil because their faces now are crazy because they've been damaged too much and they're like laughing and being snarky and they've like learned nothing and are exactly the same and they're still obsessed with beauty even though they're hideous to behold. And then the movie ends with them like falling down the stairs of the church and breaking to a million pieces, but they still are alive and have to live like that or put themselves back together again for all time. And so I think we're supposed to see like what Bruce chose as the good choice and, you know, Meryl and Goldie as like the bad.
The ending to Death Becomes Her frustrates me though. Much like how we described the point where Meryl first falls down the staircase and breaks her neck and then she discovers what the potion has really done and prevents her from dying in a way. Helen slips on a spray paint can that she didn't see on the staircase and then she grabs onto Madeline. They both fall down the stairs and they shatter into so many pieces and their reaction is like they're just like kind of annoyed, but they have shattered to so many pieces that neither of them can help the other anymore. But they both react in a way where they're like, this is annoying.
I guess my interpretation of that was it's happened to them.
They're decapitated. And not only are they decapitated, all the rest of their body are like smashed up too. Like their fingers are smashed up. How are they going to put themselves back together? It doesn't make any sense.
I guess I see what you're saying. But again, that goes to this idea that they're soulless and they like don't have human reactions
It's
anymore.
like, what? I want to know what happened next. Like the crap, like they should be a little more frustrated with what happened. But
I guess that's probably true. I don't know. Yeah. I didn't really think about that, I guess. I heard that there was another ending, but it tested really poorly. Where I think it was something like while Bruce manages to, I remember when I read it, I thought it was like a queer ending because the character, Bruce finds someone to run away with, the name was gender neutral. So I thought it was a man, but it was a woman. But anyway, and they like go and they build like a nice life together. And then somehow Meryl and Goldie find him again and they're like still the same as ever. And I forget what about it. I mean, that sounds fine as an ending. Maybe I'll look it up. Hang on. Okay, most dramatically, the original ending was entirely redone after test audiences reacted negatively to it. The ending featured Ernst, Bruce Willis, after he fled Liesel, Isabella Rossellini's party, meeting a bartender named Tony, spelled with an I, who helps him fake his death to evade Madeline and Helen. The two women encounter Ernst and the bartender 27 years later, living happily as a retired couple while Madeline and Helen give no sign that they are enjoying their eternal existence. Zemeckis thought the ending was too happy and opted for the darker ending featured in the final. But yeah, I thought Tony was a guy.
Yeah.
Oh well. Guess you can't have it all.
Did you think Bruce Willis's character was gay earlier in the movie?
No, but I was.
That then these women like turned him gay.
No, I was just open to
more queerness.
I was just open to it. I was down.
Bruce Willis also gave a really amazing performance in this.
He did.
Had Allison watch Moonlighting in the past, and I've talked about it on the podcast before.
I was thinking about Moonlighting while we were watching it.
I mean, he started out in comedy, and I think that he dipped into some more dramatic performances before doing Death Becomes Her, and then I think after Death Becomes Her, he didn't really return to comedy. He was like in one movie with the guy from 30 Rock, Tracy Morgan. They were in a movie together, but that was like 12 or so years ago.
Okay. I mean, to me, The Sixth Sense. And it is interesting that like there is a character who's like, no, I don't want the purple potion, you know, because I feel like, first of all, they want him to take it so that I think he's afraid of being trapped with them forever. But then I believe Isabella Rossellini describes it to him. And unlike Goldie and Meryl, he's like, no. Made me wonder what you would do.
No, I would not drink it.
Same. You know, there's all those like, whatchamacallits out there, billionaires who are the word's so foreign to me that I can't even think of it, who are, trying to find the elixir of life or like believe that they can transfuse young blood and live longer and all that stuff. I'm just like, no.
There's different from like a blood transfusion and drinking a potion. I think there's quite a difference.
Well, I mean, of course, yeah.
But why? Aside from like what are the negatives of down? Let's forget about the billionaire blood transfusion. That's not part of this statement.
I mean, it's part of the cultural conversation.
The simplicity of drinking the potion to live forever.
Oh, like why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah.
I believe that in my like knee-jerk reaction to things, I was kind of raised in a certain kind of like tradition where like a Catholic tradition where I'm just like, nope. Not supposed to do that. That's bad. That's wrong. You're not supposed to do that. So I just think that like, even if I don't.
So morality standpoint.
Not even morality. It's just like, I don't know how to explain it. It just feels like we're not supposed to want to live forever.
It's a hard question to ask because I've like seen this movie and I've now the morality has been implanted in my mind. But if you're like, drink this and you don't have to worry about dying.
And I guess, yeah.
That'd be interesting.
I wouldn't do that, but I mean, she didn't say that.
Drink this and you don't have to worry about aging. That'd be interesting.
That's the part where it's like, would you... But then it goes like to plastic surgery, right? Like I wouldn't do that.
But it's not plastic surgery.
But it's like I know
you drink a potion.
Okay, yeah. All right, fine. We're taking it very literally, and someone was like, take this and you'll always look the same age.
Not even that. You'll like gain back some of your youth.
I mean, I feel like I'm fine with how I look.
At the age of Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn.
Well, yes, of course. That's a different story. Yes.
Would you rather be 29 than 48?
Yeah. Because that's a big gap. But I bet if you asked me at 48, I'd probably be like, nah.
What about at 67? They gave you the potion.
Well, absolutely, because then your body would feel better as well.
Okay. Now it's becoming interesting. At 68, you drink the potion.
Well, no, I don't know if I would do it, but I feel like, what about you? You always ask me these questions, and I will tell you so much.
I always ask you.
Details. But somehow, I think I started with the question.
If I'm so fortunate to make it to 78, I don't know how I'll feel then. I might be terrified of death. I might want to drink the potion. You know?
Maybe.
Maybe for me.
No, I mean more like, it's a good point, but who should play these characters if they were to remake this movie in 2024?
Anne Hathaway and Kate Hudson.
I guess I wonder if this movie would work in the same way. Because I feel like now there is much more opportunity for women in their 50s to be on the screen.
I mean, we haven't seen it yet, but Demi Moore is starring in Substance, which I think is a much more dark version of this movie.
Would it be kind of interesting to do something like Renee Zellweger and Courtney Cox, or people who have clearly undergone plastic surgery, have already tried to change their, or Nicole Kidman or something like that, and then kind of playing with these ideas in a, I mean, I guess probably, is that what Substance is doing? Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. But I just think that would be kind of cool to see it where.
Which I don't even know if Demi Moore has acknowledged that she's had plastic surgery. And I don't think Nicole Kidman's acknowledged that she's had plastic surgery.
But they, Mm-hmm. I don't think we're ready for that kind of movie though. Where someone who regrets the efforts they've undergone to look young forever is given the chance to reverse it and look as they're supposed to. I just feel like that's almost sounds upsetting to even describe, and I don't know if anyone would want to be. And
so where does Death Becomes Her hold up in, did it have a positive effect, do you think, on the landscape of how women perceive themselves, how men perceive themselves, how everyone perceives themselves?
I don't know. Giving roles to older women, but they were both, like you said, Meryl went on to do a lot, but Goldie didn't. They're definitely the villains of the movie. And it's supposed to be satirizing Hollywood in general, but the face of that are two women. So I don't know.
It's a really lighthearted comedy that isn't supposed to be analyzed in so depth. And we start this podcast arguing over if they had souls or not.
But I guess I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Because it's a satire. It's a satire. So it is, even though it's silly, it's about serious ideas.
Yeah.
Do we want to say what our favorite Meryl Streep movie or moment is ever?
My favorite moment isn't from a movie. It's when Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig were at the Golden Globes and they were describing all the Golden Globe winners. And they kept describing, they called Meryl Streep. Actually, no, my favorite performance is at the Oscars when Anne Hathaway and what's her name are up on stage after they had shot The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
And they go on, they're presenting an award, and they see Meryl Streep in the audience. And they're like, oh, hi, Meryl. They're waving really excited. And Meryl is waving too. And then they start acting really shy. Oh, don't look at her directly in the eyes. Oh, wait, how do we look? Okay, we're fine. And then Meryl realizes that they're doing a bit. And then so Meryl immediately turns back into her character from Devil Wears Prada. That's probably my favorite Meryl Streep moment.
Ooh, I'll have to look that up. I haven't seen that. I guess my favorite Meryl Streep movie is, of course, Mamma Mia.
Here we go again.
Love both. Either. I love those silly, silly movies. And I can't wait for number 3. They better be making it. That's all I got to say about that.
What would it be called?
Mama Tria. Mama Tria. I don't know. I don't care what it's called. I don't care if they play all the same songs again. I'll be there. But then my favorite Meryl pop culture moment or interview or whatever it might be. It's not really, she wasn't in it, but it was Jennifer Lawrence. I think it was she in Don't Look Up?
Yes.
Okay, so it was the press tour for that. And Jennifer Lawrence was telling this story on a talk show. And she was saying how everybody on set, all these actors, these famous actors were calling Meryl the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And they were doing it quite frequently. And then they were all at some kind of photo shoot. And Meryl was there. And they're like, oh, it's time for the GOAT to get in. Go, get in there. And she was like, oh, yes, that's right. Time for the old GOAT. And then Jennifer Lawrence is like, Meryl, do you think we've been calling you a goat this entire time? And then she was like, it means greatest of all time. And Meryl was like, oh. And I just thought that was so...
Time for the old goat to get up on the stage.
It was so endearing to me. And Jennifer Lawrence is a great storyteller. So I love that interview clip, and I will always watch it when it pops up in my life. Oh yeah, I've been kind of leaning down this whole time.
You've been sinking down.
Sorry, guys.
She didn't drink the potion.
Oh man, I really should have been sitting up like this. It looks way better. Hello. Oh my God, I'm a little concerned. Oh well, nothing we can do about it. And I would not take the potion. I would not. Unless you show me a video.
How you were sitting this entire video.
Or like what my fate would be.
What your fate would be.
Like if someone was like, here's what you look like when you're old.
And Allison hasn't used the aging app.
Did I say that?
Yeah. Have you?
I've definitely used it.
You're like, it scares me.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It sounds like something I would say.
I was doing it on my phone.
It depends on like which kind. Like I've done
the one that makes you really old.
I've done it, but what would scare me about it isn't the appearance of looking old. It's the idea that there's all those filters out there and they're like collecting our images for AI. I know, but it's not like, like an app that's like, oh, look at this fun thing. Everyone's doing it, but they're really giving away their image.
Okay.
It's true.
Sure. What are they going to do with the image though?
I don't want to just willy-nilly give away my image, even though in a cool, like, oh, what percent of green is your eyes? I definitely do it. But I know I shouldn't. Or how rare is your eye color? That was one. I was like, ooh, how rare is my eye color? And I was disappointed because mine was very rare, but it wasn't rarest. I was like, excuse me? And I did it again. And I got the same result. And then I went to different lighting. I tried again. So I have to settle for very rare. And this is a person who would not take the potion. Okay, we must depart.
We got to get out of here.
I gotta go to bed because I'm like I'm sleeping over here already. So this is Queer Cinema Catchup, the podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and miscellaneous topics through a queer lens. Please follow us on our socials: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Letterboxd. Please email us at queercinemacatchup@gmail.com. I am Allison.
I'm Joe. And this has been
Queer
Cinema
Catchup
with
Joe and Allison.
About
That becomes her with Meryl Streep. No, just kidding. She's not here.